It felt like half of the top 25 was on a bye this weekend, but there was still a lot of great games. Just like that, we're officially into October, and the college football season is really beginning to shape up. We had a lot of great games today, including some crazy finishes and some pretty big upsets. With the wild weekend now over, here is my top 25 after week 6 of the college football season. But before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you are subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. Staying at number 1, we have Ohio State, who dominated Minnesota 42-3. Julian Sayin had another fantastic game as he was nearly perfect. He completed 23 of 27 passes, throwing for over 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith had a great game as he had 7 receptions and 2 receiving touchdowns, but Carnell Tate was the MVP as he had 9 receptions for just under 200 yards and a receiving score. Oregon was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Ole Miss was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked as well. This game was a blowout for the most part, but Florida State made things a little bit interesting in the fourth quarter as Miami took down the Seminoles by 6 points. Entering the fourth quarter, Miami was up 28-3, but Florida State scored 19 unanswered points, and this was a one-possession game with under a minute remaining. Still, it was a very impressive win for Miami, and they've arguably the best resume so far on the young season. Carson Beck continues to add to his Heisman campaign as he threw for 250 yards and had 4 passing touchdowns. I talked about Miami having the best resume so far in college football, and I definitely think they have the case for it. Through their first 5 games, they've beaten 3 top 20 teams. Oklahoma had an easy one this weekend as they took down Kent State 44-0. With John Mateer out with an injury, Michael Hawkins Jr. was the quarterback, and he was pretty damn solid. He threw for 150 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. With Oklahoma missing John Mateer, you couldn't have asked for a better opponent than Kent State. For the first time since the 1930s, both Alabama and Vanderbilt played each other well ranked, and Alabama pulled out the victory, winning 30-14. Ty Simpson continues to add to his Heisman campaign as he threw for 350 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Jam Miller had one of the best games from a running back all weekend as he ran for 150 yards with a rushing score. It was an ugly week 1 loss to Florida State that's looking a little bit worse as the weeks go on, but ever since losing in week 1, Alabama has looked like one of the best teams in all of college football, and I definitely think they're back on track towards being a national championship contender. LSU was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Indiana was also off this weekend, so here's where I have them ranked. Georgia had a comfortable victory as they took down Kentucky 35-14. Gunnar Stockton threw for 200 yards and had a passing touchdown while also adding 2 touchdowns on the ground with 50 rushing yards. The Georgia defense was great once again as they held Kentucky to only 270 yards of total offense and only 7 points for a majority of the game. This game was looking a little bit interesting for Texas A&M. They were trailing at the end of the first quarter, and at halftime, they led Mississippi State by only 4 points. Entering the fourth quarter, it was still a close game, but the Aggies pulled away, and they ultimately won by 22 points. Marcel Reed threw for 200 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns, while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Reuben Owens had his best game of the season as he led the Aggies with 150 yards on the ground. I know there have been a lot of teams in the SEC getting a lot of hype through the first month of the season, but don't sleep on Texas A&M as they're one of only 4 SEC teams that are 5-0. Speaking of 5-0, Texas Tech moved to 5-0 with their 35-11 victory over Houston. Barrett Morton returned after leaving the Utah game with an injury a couple weeks ago, and he was dominant. He threw for 350 yards and had a passing touchdown. Meanwhile, on the ground, Jacoby Williams ran for 100 yards with 2 rushing scores, and Cameron Dickey added 100 yards on the ground as well. Texas Tech was getting a lot of preseason hype in the Big 12 to enter the season, and up until this point, they've lived up to that hype. Tennessee was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Georgia Tech was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. It wasn't a pretty victory, but Michigan took down Wisconsin 24-10. Bryce Underwood threw for just under 300 yards and had a passing touchdown. Meanwhile, on the ground, Justice Haynes continues to be the best running back in all of college football as he had over 100 yards with 2 rushing scores. The Wolverines had a rough loss a couple of weeks ago on the road at Oklahoma, but they've bounced back nicely ever since that loss by winning 3 games in a row. Arizona State was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Missouri was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked as well. Virginia won a thriller in overtime as they took down Louisville by 3 points. It was looking like Virginia was going to cruise to the victory, but they were outscored by the Cardinals 10-0 in the fourth quarter, which sent the game to overtime. Chandler Morris had a quiet day as he threw for only 150 yards and had a passing touchdown. On the ground, Virginia only ran for 88 total yards, averaging fewer than 3 yards a carry. It was an ugly game offensively, but at the end of the day, a win is a win, and Virginia is now 5-1. I got Cincinnati making the jump into the top 25 as they won a thriller against number 14 Iowa State, winning 38-30. Now this was an interesting game because despite Iowa State being ranked 14, being the undefeated team, they were actually the underdogs entering this game at Cincinnati. I was a little bit thrown off as to why the Bearcats were the favorite, but they proved that they were the better team. Brendan Sorsby threw for over 200 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns while adding 70 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Running back Evan Pryor lit the way with 110 rushing yards and had 2 rushing scores. There are a lot of Big 12 teams we've been talking about through the first month of the season, but we haven't talked about Cincinnati just yet, and after this victory, they're right in the discussion for the Big 12. After losing their first 2 games to begin the season, Notre Dame has now won 3 consecutive games as they took down Boise State 28-7. CJ Carr threw for 200 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile on the ground, Jeremiah Love ran for over 100 yards and had a rushing score. Running back Jadarian Price also had himself quite the game as he ran for 80 yards and had a rushing score as well. After dropping the first 2 games of the season, Notre Dame has still a long way to go before they want to emerge as a solid playoff contender. But if they can win out, they'll still have a chance. The dream season to Vanderbilt came to an end as they fell on the road to Alabama by 16 points. Now, I will give the Commodores credit because this game was tied at the half and they trailed by only 6 points in the fourth quarter. They had plenty of chances to potentially take the lead, but they continuously shot themselves in the foot. Diego Pavia threw for 200 yards and had a passing touchdown, but he did have a costly interception. He also added 60 yards on the ground as well. Although Vanderbilt couldn't pull off the upset and stun Alabama, they still played a really competitive game, and I definitely still think they are deserving of being in the SEC discussion. Illinois had another strong day from their offense as they took down Purdue 43-27. Luke Altmaier completed 19 of 22 passes, throwing for just under 400 yards. Meanwhile on the ground, Collie Valentine ran for 100 yards and had a rushing score, while running back Caden Fegan added 2 rushing scores as well. Illinois had that terrible loss a couple of weeks ago when they lost by 50 points to Indiana, but they took down a ranked USC team last week and their offense dominated Purdue this week. Another sneaky team in the Big 12 is BYU, as they moved to 5-0 on the season with their 38-24 victory over West Virginia. Bear Bachmeier had his best game of the season, throwing for 350 yards with a passing touchdown. He also added 50 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. There are so many teams in the Big 12 that are alive for the conference championship after the first month, but there's BYU sitting at the top as they're 2-0 in conference play and 5-0 on the season. Iowa State dropped their first game of the year as they fell on the road to Cincinnati, losing 38-30. Rocco Beck threw for over 300 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns, while also adding 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. He did all he could for the Cyclones offense as he gave them nearly 350 yards of offense with 4 total touchdowns. Unfortunately, his defense couldn't stop anyone on Cincinnati, and that's the reason the Cyclones dropped this game. Considering we're nearly at the halfway point of the season, I think you can make the case that Memphis, they're the favorite to be the Group of 5 representative in the college football playoff. They moved to 6-0 on the season with their 45-7 victory over Tulsa. Quarterback Brendan Lewis threw for just under 300 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. He was also the leading rusher for the Tigers, adding 70 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Upon a quick glance of all of the teams in college football, Memphis is actually the only team in the FBS that is 6-0 on the season. We're going to wrap up today's video with another Group of 5 team making their case towards being the Group of 5 champion in Navy. They took down Air Force 34-31 to move to 5-0 on the season. Now, I don't know what exactly was going on in this game, but this wasn't a Navy Air Force game. Overall, there was more than 550 passing yards in this game. Blake Horvath of Navy was responsible for 340 of those yards as he threw 3 passing touchdowns. This was one of the best performances we've seen from a player all season. In addition to his 340 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, he also added 130 yards on the ground with a rushing score. Overall for the the game, Blake Horvath had 470 total yards of offense and 4 total touchdowns. I know I just talked about Memphis being the group of 5 favorite, but right behind them, I got Navy. Well, that wraps it up for today's top 25. What were your thoughts on this week's rankings? Was there a team I had ranked way too high, or was there a team I had ranked way too low? Or was there a team that didn't even crack the top 25 that should have been in this list? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm, and it helps share this video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.